actually has the best hand with his ace high. And he's going to give this some thought. You will recall earlier I quoted the old Mike Caro rule of thumb. If somebody in No Limit Hold'em thinks for a long time and then puts out a bet, you should be very suspicious. I think what you've got going on here is a very fascinating chess game. Shannon has called, intending to bluff on the turn. William, now, instead of making that continuation bet on the turn quite quickly, is spending a lot of time thinking about it. I suspect he is doing that because he is hoping to communicate to Shannon, I have a big hand. The old double reverse psychology ploy. These guys are definitely trying to get into one another's heads. If you are William, you're worried about Shannon's call on the flop. You know, a flop of 10 deuce deuce, you're thinking to yourself, well, what did he possibly call with? A 10? A deuce? It would be very tempting here, if you're William, simply to check and hope to hit the 5 on the river. You don't see this often. You don't see a player think about it for a long time when he's not facing action. A 7,000 chip bet from William with the best hand. And Shannon moves all in. There is the anticipated bluff. What a great play. On a board like that, 10 deuce deuce, you've called in the big blind. Then you've called a bet on the flop. I mean, you've done everything in your power to convince William, I have a piece of that board. If William does not have an overpair or ace-10 or has lucked in to a deuce himself, he's going to have a tremendous amount of difficulty calling your all-in check raise on the turn. Really nice play by Shannon. He got lucky that William did in fact bet the turn. A lot of players in William's seat might have checked behind with the gut shot and the ace high. But William made a little bet, opened the door for Shannon to make this very, very, very lovely bluff, and Shannon has in fact done just that. Very nice play from Shannon Shore. William now finds himself in the position where he has stepped out of line and now is trying to figure out whether or not he has enough odds to make the call. He's getting short stacked. He does fold. Shannon shows the bluff. That's throwing it in your opponent's face. He shows the bluff. I'm not sure why you do that. I guess you're hoping to set up that later on the big stack, you'll get a call at a Chris Cornell later on. Shannon Shore, nice play.
Talked about earlier the showing of bluffs. I think on day 3, Chris showed a bluff to David Matthew that tilted him, frankly. So it's to show or not to show. It's a great debate. If you show the bluff, well, you're telling the other players sometimes I bluff, but most importantly, you're saying to the guy you bluffed, I can play this game better than you can. That's a bold statement, and it often changes the dynamic of the game a little bit because it's like smacking him in the face. Shannon just showed a bluff.
6-3 of clubs for Shannon Shore. He calls. 10-8 of diamonds for Sebastien Riviere. Also calls. An 8-5 of clubs for Troy Otto, who is the small blind. He calls to Eric Baldwin, who's looking at a 5-3 of hearts. And he checks. It's the battle of the suited 1 and 2 gappers. King 7-4, 2 clubs. Both Shannon and Troy have flopped flush draws with a gut shot straight. Eric checks. He also has a gut shot straight. Nobody with much of anything. Couple of big draws. Shannon contemplating betting. And he will
25.
bet a very small bet, 2,500. Very, very small bet. Sebastian makes it 10,000 to go. He's come over the top with absolutely nothing. He's making a pure bluff on a board that certainly looks pretty safe. And Troy's got a decision to make. He has a weak flush draw and a gut shot straight. Interesting bluff from Sebastian into a field of 3 players. It's a lot of mud to wade through, but certainly nobody with any strength pre-flop.
All in.
Troy Auto moves all in. Very nice bet. Bold bet. Troy,
Yes, sir.
of course, believes he has 12 outs. He actually only has 10. He has 7 clubs or any 6.
43-3.
43,000. That puts it back into Shannon's court. Shannon is facing a call of approximately 40,000 into a pot of 68,000. Shannon moves all in.
Shannon now moving on, and Sebastian folds.
That's very interesting. Very interesting hand. Troy is shocked to see when those cards come face up that he has not only the best hand, but a dominating hand. Shannon is going to need a 5 or a 3 or some combination of running cards for a split. 5 or a 3 for a win, some odd combination for a split. 2 of spades still leaves Troy's 8 high as winning on the turn. Boy, not often you see a guy going into the river with 8 high as the best hand. Queen of Hearts. Troy's 8 is good. The 8 high, the winner, puts Troy Auto right back in it. That pot's over 100,000 chips, and Troy rejoins the league, rejoins the middle of the pack. Wow. Interesting hand, where they both have the same hand. They both have a flush draw and a gut shot straight draw, but because Troy's is higher, it turns out he's got a very, very dominating hand in that spot. Queen 9 offsuit for Chris Cornell. And he's going to put in a raise.
Raise.
That's a very weak no-limit hand, but you see Chris here starting to try and bully the table with his massive pile of chips.
6.
6,000. William Erickson,
All in.
no question. All in with Big Slick for William, and pocket 9s for the Big Flick, for Charlie Flicker from Montreal. And Charlie is going to take some time with this decision. An open raise and a re-raise, and you have pocket 9s. What Charlie is going to ask himself
8.
is whether
13, 14.
or not either Chris Cornell or William Erickson has a pair bigger than 9s.
I'd wait till player asked Jimmy.
If Charlie knew what their cards were, if he
17-3
knew about the
total
Queen 9 and the Ace King, he would call in the blink of an eye. But he's going to try and figure out if one of them has an overpair.